Now, 2023 is also a big year for India, which has taken over the presidency of the G20 group of major world economies. It's both a challenge and an opportunity for Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
बात G20 में नमो क्रांति की। बाली में आज ऐतिहासिक तस्वीरें देखने को मिली। भारत को G20 की अध्यक्षता औपचारिक तौर पर सौंपी गई।
Indonesia has handed over the G20 presidency to India for the coming year as the Bali summit has ended today.
दिसंबर से भारत संयुक्त राष्ट्र सुरक्षा परिषद का अध्यक्ष बन गया है।
2023 will be India's year. I'm not making a sweeping statement, I'm stating what is obvious. This year, 2023, New Delhi will be the capital of global diplomacy.
Hi everybody, this is Atharva, and you're watching The Mere Interpretation. So, in our last video, we discussed the need for a new parliament. That is an astounding move from the government. It was much needed but mostly for the betterment of our country. But if we open our eyes wide open beyond our country, there is one opportunity that came to us which will help us to make a strong impact in world as well as rise as a world leader, and that is the G20 Summit Presidency 2023. An opportunity that came to us last year, in the form of presidency of G20, at G20 Summit, Indonesia. Check this video. Not only Indians but also the rest of the world are watching and hopeful about this summit. Whether it is in Indian media or the Western media, this is a hot topic for everyone. India as G20 president. So, as India was handed the presidency, our government started preparing for it. We not only invited organizations like the UN and World Bank but also guest countries like Bangladesh, Egypt, Mauritius, the Netherlands, Oman, Singapore, Spain, and the UAE, which is the United Arab Emirates. Also, our Prime Minister launched the logo as well as the theme for this summit, which is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means, the whole world is our home. Before diving into India's agenda for the G20, let's quickly dive into the history of the G20. The G20 was formed mainly due to two crises, the Asian financial crisis of 1997 and the Great Recession of 2008. The Asian financial crisis started in Thailand as they ran out of foreign currency, which eventually increased the exchange rate. To cope with it, the Central Bank of Thailand increased its interest rate, eventually hurting their currency value and crashing the stock market. It further affected countries like South Korea, Indonesia, and Thailand. Just look at this graph. Every currency's value compares to American dollar fell down. Also, the GDP, gross domestic product, per capita, which indicates the per capita income of a person, sharply fell down. Almost all ASEAN countries had some repercussions of that crisis. In 2000, tech stocks, which were favorites of Americans, fell, spreading panic in the USA. So to find some safer options to invest their money in, Americans found the housing development sector, which wasn't very famous at the time, to invest in. American citizens literally started taking loans from banks to invest and buy properties across America. Because of this, the sector that was in the desert turned into the great Amazon forest. As people were taking more and more loans, the banks that were giving them found themselves running out of cash. So they took loans from investment banks like Lehman Brothers and others. Investment banks not only lend money but also structure CDO bonds, which are collateral debt bonds. People started buying that bond too. Due to this, demand rises, and as demand rises, prices also rise. But somehow people felt that the CDO could fall and they could go bankrupt, so they took insurance on it from insurance companies. Insurance firms like AIG Insurance started giving insurance loans to CDOs that are called CDs, which turned out to be everyone's profit. Everything was going well, but it was a bubble that was going to burst at any time. As the US government increased the interest rate, the MS of people increased, and people were left in a position to not pay those MS. As a result, banks started falling into the trap of bad loans, and eventually that loss also captured the insurance banks. As people started defaulting, banks started auctioning their properties, which disrupted the demand-supply chain as the price of the property was lowered but the loan wasn't. In all this scenario, the most hurt player was the investment bank. Because banks started asking for money from investment banks as a cover to avoid going bankrupt, one of the wealthiest investment banks in the USA, Lehman Brothers, declared itself bankrupt, and then the Great Recession started not only in America but also in the whole world. So to get rid of this economic crisis, in 1997, the G20 was formed. But at that time, only finance ministers and central bank governors attended the summit. But after the 2008 crisis, which we just saw, America, who was the chair of the summit, proposed to call the ministers of every ministry to attend the summit. How does the G20 work? Troika. As other organizations have heads and headquarters, the G20 doesn't have any specific heads or headquarters. It works on a term called Troika, where the host country, previous host country, and next host country are heads for their respective times. In our case, Indonesia, India, and Brazil are the next hosts. And every country has a Sherpa, Mr. Amitabh Kant, former NITI AAYOG SEO. But what G20 does? How it works? Let's have a quick look. First one is financial track, where all finance minister along with governors meet and discuss on various topics like in this table, whereas in Sherpa track, other important matters as finance are discussed. G20 meeting cities, D, runs parallel. Our next point is the G20 meetings held in India in 50 different cities. The first Sherpa meeting was held in Udaipur, headed by Amitabh Kant, our Sherpa at the G20. First Financial as well as Central Bank Deputies Summit, headed by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das at Bangalore. The Development Working Group meeting will take place in the financial capital of India, Mumbai, whereas the Health Working Group meeting will take place in Tiruvananthapuram. One of the most important meetings taking place is that of the Foreign Ministers, which will be headed by Dr. S. Jayashankar in Delhi. Also, a Tourism Working Group meeting is scheduled for Srinagar, as a Education Working Group meetings headed for Chennai. The Research and Innovative Initiative gathering was held in Itanagar. Why is this summit an opportunity for India? So why is this summit so special? Why the world and the West are eyeing it? There are various reasons we can give. The corona outburst and how India helped the world. The Russia-Ukraine war, food chain supply interruptions. Renewable energy as India declared last year to end net carbon emissions till 2070. Improving digital infrastructure, and strengthening the global trading system. Check out what the diplomats who arrived in India are
Just purchased a beautiful dress by using a technology that's Google Pay. And I'm not even surprised because I know India is the pioneer of digital technology.
I think India has a great opportunity to pivot the focus of the world to the developing, world of developing communities or the global south.
Fantastic hospitality by the Indian host. So the presidency of G20 has been extraordinarily welcome.
Loved one of all around the world, but I mean, this has really proven that he has been a major leader, and congratulations for that, Prime Minister.
Prime Minister Modi is the boss.
Being what India is of today and what India will be in the coming years and perhaps the next decade, that India will lead the global community towards a better structure that will put the...
India has a great future ahead.
India's proposal to add the African Union, G21, least, India has surprised everyone by proposing adding the African Union, as its 21st permanent member.
Sources have said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has taken a bold step in enhancing Africa's voice on the international stage.
I believe that because all of them are very conscious that Africa deserves to have a seat in the organization.
And what ahead of the G20 summit in September in New Delhi, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has written to G20 member countries, and according to sources, he has proposed African Union to be given full membership at the upcoming summit.
The African Union, consisting of 54 countries, has been pushing its demand to be a permanent member for a decade. As only one nation, South Africa, is representing the G20 from the African Union, it is inefficient to propose ideas or demands on the G20 platform. The African Union, together, being a $1 trillion economy, has been seeking development for a long time. This is with O, but what are the advantages that O brought to the table for G20 countries? Inclusion of ore can increase the percentage of geoeconomics from 65% to 80%. As the African continent is rich in minerals, it is a valuable asset for earning money through partnerships with watch country governments in the ore. The African market is yet to be explored by many developed or developing countries. Entering those markets can give a boost to the economies of individuals and eventually the G20. The African Union is not as hurt by climate change as others. So, with proper care and planning, it can be a little ray of hope for reviving the world from climate change. As proud Indians, let's have a look at our own advantages through African Union's inclusion in the G20. India will emerge as the leader of the developing and underdeveloped countries. We can establish a FTA, or free trade agreement, with all our nations, which will help us reduce our dependency on dollars. It will also help us achieve our target of a $5 trillion economy soon. We can generate a high-risk workforce there. Most importantly, if we propose to bring any resolution to the UN, 54 African nations will support us out of 193 members, which is almost 1/4 of the UN capacity. Lastly, as we have given lines of credit with very low rates and have good relationships with most of the African nations, our companies can get contracts for mining and processing minerals and fossil fuels. We have advanced technology, which African countries don't have. I think this is a masterstroke India has made in the G20. With this, India will not only emerge as a world leader but also lead the world to its theme, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is, the whole world as our home.